Hello, this is Dr. Michael Arnheim here again with my colleague Bernard Baer. Hello! And an exhibit of my latest book, Practical Guide to Your Human Rights and Civil Liberties, which you've read, haven't you, Bernard? No, I wrote it. Well, Bernard did, of course, help with the writing. I wouldn't say he wrote it. Would you say you wrote it all by yourself? No. Well, you certainly were a great help, I must say. Thank you very much. Bernard is always so very helpful in these things, and he's got such a brilliant mind and so independent. I know he's blushing a little now, because he's very modest actually as well. Jaguar also contributed in his very, very quiet manner, didn't you? Maybe. Doesn't really give much away. But this book is very different from most books on the subject. There is no shortage of books on human rights. But what this book does is to show you how few human rights you have compared to what you are constantly told you have. Let me just go through a couple of chapter headings. Give you some idea. A Fistful of Fallacies, one of the chapters is called, which goes into a lot of the misapprehensions that are constantly touted by so many writers on human rights. One of them, I'll just mention very quickly, is about national security. And this, unfortunately, has been picked up by the courts as well. A lot of judges seem to think that national security has got to be balanced against human rights. It's a seesaw. The more you have of one, the less of the other. That is, in other words, it's a zero-sum game. That, therefore, if the government wishes to crack down on suspected terrorists, terror suspects, that is an infringement of human rights. No, it is not. It's not a zero-sum game, because think of it, if you think of it correctly, it's like this. Bernard? Rights against rights. That's it. It's rights against rights. Yes, the rights of a suspect, of a terror suspect, he has rights, she or he has rights. But going against those rights does not mean that you are actually handicapping everyone's rights, because security, national security, is another way of saying the rights of law-abiding citizens, law-abiding people in the population at large. It's in their interest to be protected against terror, to be protected against terrorists. So therefore, national security is not something which deprives you of your human rights. It actually guarantees your human rights. And if the rights of terror suspects are preferred to the right to national security, that doesn't help the rights of the individual in general, ordinary law-abiding people. And there are some lessons from history, which I'll very quickly mention, which are in the book also. For example, in the Weimar Republic in Germany in the 1930s, the Weimar Republic took this liberal approach that, oh, well, we can't crack down on Hitler or the communists because that would be against human rights. And as a result, the communists and Hitler's Nazis took over the streets, and everybody suffered in the end. In the end, of course, Hitler took power, albeit through an election, but with the help of violence on the streets, and you know what happened. Another very good example is what I call the Kerensky syndrome. Now, Alexander Kerensky, his name is practically forgotten now, was the Prime Minister of Russia for a brief time in 1917, between the so-called February Revolution, which actually took place in March, and the so-called October Revolution, which took place in November. During that brief time, Russia had a democratic government, and it was headed by Alexander Kerensky. That's right, Alexander Kerensky. But he was such a big liberal, a bit of a socialist as well, that he said no enemies on the left. He did not feel that he could crack down on Lenin and his bully boys, the Bolsheviks. As a result, Lenin took over power in Russia by means of what was really a coup d'etat, then always described as the Great October Revolution, but it was really a coup d'etat. And the Bolsheviks ruled Russia for well over another half century after that. So, until the 1990 odd. So, we're talking about a very serious problem resulting from lack of attention to national security. National security is not the opposite of human rights. It bolsters your human rights. Something worth remembering. Exactly the opposite of the normal view on human rights. That's just one example from this book of mine. There are plenty more, but I've just given you that one example. So please, go out and buy it. You can get it on Amazon. It's available as an e-book, Kindle, or as a paperback. Very reasonably priced at £10.99. You didn't have to buy one, Bear, did you? No. I wrote it. Well, Bernard always says he wrote it. Actually, he did help in the writing of it, didn't you? Yes. Well, he didn't exactly write it, but it has his stamp of approval, therefore you can take it for granted that it is a good book, isn't it? Very good. Thank you, Bear. See, Bernard, with that endorsement, I really don't need anything else.